Welcome, everybody. Would like to start our January 3rd Commissioners meeting, and as customary, we always start it with a invocation. If you choose to, you can bow your heads, and I will lead us in prayer. Our precious Heavenly Father, I come to you tonight, a sinner saved by grace, asking for guidance on this board as we make decisions that affect our citizens, the ones we're put here to serve. We ask that your divine protection be on our law enforcement, our fire and EMS. We ask that you bless this county to work for good. I ask all these things in your name. Amen. Now, if you'll stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we start with our agenda items, I want to take this time to recognize Commissioner Richard Helms for his leadership as chairman of the board during the past year. Richard has served 2 times, my first year on the board and last year, and Jerry served in between. Richard has served us and the community well, and we want to provide him with a token of our appreciation. That's what I was looking for. Let's go down front so they can get a picture. I'd like to give you this, Richard. Really appreciate Richard has been like a brother to me, as well Jerry, David, and Tony. Thank you. We have several items of recognition for our finance staff too. I'll recognize Deputy County Manager Michelle Lancaster to provide an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we have 3 recognitions for our finance staff, and I'm just going to take these items all together and then ask the finance staff to come up and be recognized. So first, we have our GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This award recognizes the Union County Finance Department for receiving the Governmental Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. This Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by government and its management. This is the 9th consecutive year in which Union County has received this recognition. Second, we're also looking for our staff to receive the award for Outstanding Achievement in Popular Annual Financial Reporting for the year ending June 30th, 2020. This also comes from GFOA, and this award represents a significant achievement by the entity. In order to be eligible for this award, a government must also submit its comprehensive annual financial report to GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting Program and receive the certificate for the current fiscal year. Each eligible report is reviewed by judges who evaluate the report based on the following categories: reader appeal, understandability, distribution methods, creativity, and other elements. This is the 7th consecutive year in which Union County has received this award. And third, we are receiving the Triple Crown Award for FY 2019 from GFOA. On December 6th of 2021, GFOA awarded the Triple Crown Award to Union County for receiving the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, Distinguished Budget Presentation Award, and the Popular Annual Financial Reporting Award for fiscal year ending 2019. The reports were judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the reports. So with that, I would like to ask Beverly to recognize her staff and have them come up and receive recognition from the board for this outstanding work.
Thank you all. Today we have with us our senior accountant, Avery Truffaut, Heather Cowie, one of our accounting technicians, Trina Horn, our accounting services supervisor, Daniel Purser, another senior accountant, as well as Amy Collinsworth, our assistant finance director. And they all do a very great job, as you can tell based on our awards, and we appreciate all the hard work that goes into all these documents that we have to produce each year.
Okay, I've got 2 awards, so.
So you can do both at the same time.
Okay, I just didn't want to carry them the right one. Great.
Okay.
Congratulations. 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 And if you would reach behind you and get that other one, I'll let this lady right here. There you go.
We're also missing a couple of our staff that were unable to be here, Alex Whitaker and Amanda Austin as well.
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, it's time for informal comments, and so that everybody's not confused, we only have one person signed up for informal comments, but we have people signed up for the rezoning public hearing. So don't panic. Miss Loretta from Litter Busters of Union County. If y'all seen any of the groups on the roads picking it up, it's all because this lady right here has a passion for trying to keep Union County clean.
Oh, my goodness.
We all sing hail to the chief.
Good evening, everyone. Commissioners, thank you. There's Mr. Watson. You keep moving around. And other ladies and gentlemen who are here. Loretta Melanson, 2923 Meadow Creek Lane here in Monroe. I am here with a very grateful heart and really excited about beginning the new year with our county. I am going to be interviewed tomorrow morning by Spectrum News 1, and they are considering me a voice for change. But I want to let you know that I will be giving credit where credit is due. Union County is a huge voice for change. I represent Litter Busters, and both Monroe and Union County have been working with me for quite a few years now to try to not just pick up all of the litter, but to eliminate it. And I know that's a big goal, but you've got to start somewhere, and you've got to aim high, and perhaps we'll make a difference before I leave this earth. Anyway, I do want to thank you for your visioning. That process was wonderful. I was on the environmental committee, and out of that, we now have the Litter Task Force that Union County has created as a result. and I'm anxious to get started with those meetings and for our group to vision for the future of a litter-free Union County, and maybe we can be an example for all the other counties here in North Carolina. So thank you for all your support over the past, gosh, it's got to be 5 years now. And I hope we can continue to work successfully together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Loretta.
What?
I was going to ask you, is there any truth to the rumor that y'all are coming out with a Litter Busters 1 movie this year where you'll be the star?
Oh, hey, you know what? That's an excellent suggestion.
Well, thank you for all you do.
Now, I'm serious about this, Commissioner. You know, that's where you get the message across, unfortunately, is on TV, because most people do most of their time watching TV. So maybe I can talk to Spectrum, maybe Netflix, you never know. I have big ideas.
Okay.
And we will really put Union County and our forward thinking and our proactive approach out there to for everybody else. Thank you again.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, we're going to start the public hearing for rezoning petition CZ 2021-006, and I'm going to ask Bjorn Hansen to come forward and handle this.
Evening, Chairman Ray, members of the board, Manager Watson. This is a rezoning that we've titled CZ 2021-006, called the City Switch rezoning. It is a request to rezone a portion, or actually all of a parcel in Sandy Ridge Township to use a portion of it to build a 160-foot monopole telecommunications tower with a 10-foot lightning rod on top of it. The conditions associated with it are below. There is actually an additional condition that the applicant will propose tonight and can be accepted by the board when it's time for consideration of action. The existing conditions, it is off of Ray Road and is behind the commercial center with the Andy's Custard and the Lighthouse Children's daycare facility, as well as some other commercial uses. There's townhomes in the distance that are towards Mecklenburg County. This is an aerial of the site, really illustrates what we're talking about. This is Ray Road, this is the lighthouse, and then the tower is in this vicinity right here. All the area behind here is floodplain and a stream. In terms of adjacent municipalities, it is immediately adjacent to Marvin. In terms of development status, this parcel is undeveloped. It just has the stormwater facilities along the north central portion of it. There's single family to the west and commercial and multifamily to the east and north. In terms of environmental features, again, you can see the floodway through here. This was a topic of discussion quite a bit through the public comment and review process. Our understanding of the state and federal laws that apply to this is that this is outside of the area that would be impacted by the floodplain. And the benefit of this is not an approval to construct it. It'll still have to go through all that permitting process. So if in fact a mistake was made as a part of that and it can't be built, it'll be noted as such by the state authorities. However, we've been in contact with them and understand the rules as how they would apply that it would allow this site to be built. In terms of zoning, I actually did a screen capture from our Union County Go Map site because there is a lot of complex zoning in the area. And the reason why this is actually coming before you and not the Board of Adjustment is because this parcel was conditionally zoned several years ago to allow the commercial development to occur. And because there was a list of conditions associated with it, it was essentially a unique zoning. Therefore, it wasn't in the table of uses in the zoning ordinance that would allow it to be a special use permit. It had to be brought to you as a amendment to the zoning conditions. So this is a unique situation that we're in. And then the whole gray area, that's all Marvin, and you have remaining conditionally zoned property to the east. In terms of transportation, this is along Ray Road. The transportation impact is going to be essentially nothing once construction is complete. There are no funded projects in this area. In terms of the land use plan, Ray Road and Tom Short is a commercial node with single-family residential surrounding it. However, we don't do land use planning for telecommunications towers, so that isn't really meant to say that the land use plan calls for this or doesn't call for it. However, where you have activity occurring, people living and business occurring, there's a need for telecommunications facilities and coverage. In terms of public feedback, there's been quite a bit, over 20 letters and emails, with the majority opposing the rezoning. We have received some residents' comments that, listen, telecommunications coverage isn't great in the area, and the telecommunications companies that would be interested in co-locating on this tower also stating that they would be in support of this because it would improve their coverage. We did receive a resolution of opposition submitted by Marvin, 2 petitions signed by hundreds of people. Joint opposition and documentation that's in your agenda packet submitted by 3 nearby homeowner associations working together. And at the community meeting for the actual rezoning, as well as at the planning board, there was significant opposition presented. Staff recommendation and the planning board recommendation are both for denial. The negatives are that the appearance of the tower and the fencing is out of character for the immediately adjacent properties, and the location of the tower is uniquely located to harm adjacent properties due to possible falling debris. That doesn't necessarily mean that the tower is going to be built poorly or maintained poorly, but that things happen, and the fact that it is next to commercial activities where there's a lot of activity, the risk of harm is higher than it would be in a more isolated area. In terms of the positives, would enhance telecommunications coverage and does include a potential connection opportunity for a trail going between this commercial site and the trail network immediately west of the creek. So again, those are the 2 recommendations from the planning board and staff. This is for the public hearing, so before it opens up, you have people who are signed up who are residents. You also have the applicant who may be signed up as well. I haven't looked at that list, so you may call them twice inadvertently if they come up and speak immediately after me.
Commissioner Hill.
Yes, can you go back to your first slide? Because I've gone out and observed the property.
This one?
Yeah, I see, is a little red X where the intended,
It's pretty close. It would really be right here.
well, from what I saw, that's about the only part that was above a floodplain status.
That's
Is there-
correct.
How much is in that area that you're putting how much square footage is it they're going to be able to put this on?
This proposal is approximately 6,000 square feet, so that's like 1/7 of an acre. So that's, I mean, it fits on that site, but that's really all you can do with it.
So 1/7 acre out of the 4 acres is what's usable.
Well, it's proposed to be used for the cell phone tower site.
What about the ingress egress? Is there deeded ingress?
It is.
egress?
I've looked at the subdivision for this when this was platted, and it's a joint easement between the 2 properties going back.
But is it deeded for egress, ingress for others?
Yeah, it goes all the way back to the properties that are
Okay.
part of this. I will note that both of the properties, both the group that manages leasing properties here and the owner are against this, but the properties do allow that cross easement to occur, that cross access to occur.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Bjorn. And now we'll start the people wishing to speak during this public hearing. The first person signed up is Mrs., Ayori Oyomo.
I'm Karen Kimmerer with the applicant, and I did not see the sign-in sheet, so.
Ma'am, you're here for the applicant?
I'm here for the applicant.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, would you like for her to speak?
Yeah, I
ma'am?
think that's normally how we conduct these, is that we present, the applicant presents any additional information,
Okay.
and then it goes to the
All
general
right,
public for comment.
I'm sorry. If you would state your name and,
There you go.
Just,
Yeah.
okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Karen Kimmerer, and I'm an attorney with Fox Rothschild in Raleigh, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant, AT&T Mobility and City Switch. And as Mr. Hansen has stated, this is our application to amend the current conditions that are on the property so that City Switch can construct a 160-foot tall cell tower that has a 10-foot lightning rod. So the overall height of the tower will be 170 feet. And this is so that a number of carriers can improve coverage in this area of the county. And those carriers are AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Dish Network. And this is also a tower for the First Responder Network Authority that I will refer to going forward as FirstNet to provide broadband coverage to the first responders in the county. And as Mr. Hansen has mentioned, and as the board is probably aware, there is opposition to our application for a new tower from a number of the people who live in the area, and then a couple of people who work in the area. And their objection is that they do not want to have a tower that's located near their residences or their business, the daycare facility. But there is also support for this tower application and for improved coverage in the county. And so I want to emphasize that this application for a tower is really for the greater good of Union County and the area surrounding the site, because it will provide substantial benefits to residents of the village of Marvin, the town of Waxhaw, and the county, and then the people who work and then travel through the area. And then, despite some of the claims that you will probably hear this evening, this is an appropriate location for a new cell tower. It's located in a B2, which is a community business zoning district. And I did want to point out one of the provisions of the county's Unified Development Ordinance. And B2 zoning districts, a concealed tower such as a monopine, which City Switch has offered as a condition to construct, if there were not already conditions placed on this property, the monopine would be permitted by right on this property. So it would be a simple administrative approval by the planning staff. And then if a monopole was proposed for the site, a special use permit would be required rather than a rezoning. So just as a little bit of background, that this B2 zoning classification provides specific requirements for cell towers, and the only reason why we are before the commissioners tonight is because of the conditions that have been placed on the property. So basically what we need to do is to amend the conditions, not amend the conditions, but add some additional conditions to the property that would allow a cell tower to be constructed on the property. And this is a good location for a cell tower because it's located directly adjacent to the commercial area along Ray Road. And it's also directly adjacent to a heavily wooded area, and the woods will be able to buffer the view of the tower from the residential area that's located to the west of the property. And because of the wooded area that cannot be developed, because a stream is located in that area and there's a floodplain, the tower will not be visible at all from many of the vantage points or locations around the tower site. And so move on to provide some information about the site and where the tower is going to be located on the property. The property is, of course, the Rayfield LLC's property, which is located at 9921 Ray Road in Waxhaw. And the tower will be located at the southwest side of Ray Road and north of Tom Short Road. And the parcel itself is 4.78 acres. And the tower will be located adjacent and directly west of the commercial area along Ray Road, where the American Mattress, Andy's Frozen Custard, and the Children's Lighthouse daycare facility are located. And so I have a couple of aerials that I want to point out, and I have borrowed these from the planning staff's report, but I'd like to highlight them. The first aerial shows that the property is located directly east of the jurisdiction of the Village of Marvin. The second aerial shows that the property is undeveloped, and then you can see in the shaded area, that is the area that is heavily wooded and where there's a floodplain in the stream, so that area cannot be developed. And you can also see that the surrounding area around the property is commercial to the east, multifamily and single-family residential to the west, and then also to the east of Ray Road. And then the third aerial shows very well that the property, the western portion of the property is very, very heavily wooded, and that's where the floodplain is located. And so again, what that means is that the western wooded portion of the parcel will not be able to be developed, and so the woods will remain and will not be disturbed to provide a buffer from view of the tower to the residential areas to the west. And then as you can also see from this aerial, located to the east of Ray Road is a substantial buffer, and that will provide a buffer from visibility of the tower to the residential properties that are located to the east of Ray Road. And then as part of our application, we provided and submitted a very detailed application. And as part of our application, we included the construction drawings. And I have provided just a couple of slides of information from the construction drawings. The first two are the survey and the site plan. And City Switch will be leasing a very small area of the property, 6,099 square feet of the property. And then the tower will be located within an 8-foot tall wooden fenced area. And I want to point out, I want to make a comment about the planning staff's report and recommendation about the fenced area. The fenced area with an 8-foot tall wooden fence is required by the county's Unified Development Ordinance. So we are complying with the fence requirement. So that is what must occur for all new cell towers that are constructed in the county. And then, as you can see from the site plan as well, the wooded area between the tower and the property line to the east will remain undisturbed and untouched. And then the next slide is the tower elevation description. And as you can see, the tower is designed to accommodate the antennas of a total of 4 carriers. And AT&T will be on the top location of the tower. And then there will be room for Verizon, T-Mobile, and Dish Network to provide their antennas on the tower as well. And as I mentioned before, this is a FirstNet site, and just a little bit of information about FirstNet. FirstNet has entered in, the board may already know this, but FirstNet has entered into a nationwide partnership with AT&T to build the first nationwide wireless broadband network for first responders for use during times of disasters, emergencies, and daily public safety work. So this is one of the FirstNet sites. So the tower is not only important for AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Dish Network, but it's also important for FirstNet and first responders in the county. And then I'm going to move on to provide some information about the need for the tower. AT&T's radio frequency engineer will provide a little bit more detail, so I will move pretty quickly through this portion. But the tower will allow AT&T, as I mentioned, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Dish Network to provide improved coverage and to solve their coverage problems in this area of the county. And you will hear from Jason Grosclose, and he will talk about the efforts to find a site to solve these coverage problems, and that that City Switch has performed an exhaustive search effort over a course of several years, and that this is the viable location for a tower to improve these coverage problems. And then you also hear, as I mentioned, from AT&T's engineer that will talk about the existing coverage in this area of the county and the improvement of coverage. And so this is a slide that shows the existing coverage, and AT&T, sorry, I don't have a pointer, but AT&T's, the site that AT&T will be located on is in the middle location, the tower in the middle of the slide. And then AT&T is already located on the towers to the northwest, to the south, and to the east. And as you can see, there's insufficient coverage in the middle of this area where the tower is going to be constructed. And then the next slide shows the improvement of coverage once the tower has been constructed. And so you can see that AT&T will have excellent coverage in this area of the county, and that AT&T will also be able to have connectivity to the tower that's located to the northwest of this site. And then I did want to point out that the nearest tower that AT&T's antennas are not located on is 1.7 miles away from this site, near Ray Road and Tom Short Road. And as you can see, if AT&T was to place its antennas on that tower, it would not solve the coverage problems that need to be addressed with the tower that's been proposed. And then we've also provided with our application letters from T-Mobile and Verizon. And in the letters, T-Mobile and Verizon have both said that they are experiencing coverage and capacity issues in this area of the county, and that the tower will enable them to improve coverage in the village of Marvin, town of Waxhaw, and the surrounding area of the county. And so they are urging the county to support and approve this application. And so I want to move on to the balloon tests and the photographic simulations that have been performed. And a balloon test is not required by the county's ordinance, but City Switch went ahead and performed a balloon test because they wanted to be able to provide information to the county and also to the people who live in the area to show what the tower will look like once it's been constructed. And the balloon test was performed on May the 28th of 2021 by tower engineer professionals. And tower engineer professionals flew a large yellow balloon at the tower height to show what the tower will look like. And then during the balloon test, tower engineer professionals took photographs from publicly accessible locations within a half-mile radius, and in particular in the residential areas to the west, the south, and to the east. And the photographic simulations show that the tower is not going to be visible at all from a majority, 6 out of 10 of the locations. And in the locations where the tower will be visible, it will be the upper area, the top of the tower, that will be visible. And so the first photographic simulation is taken south of the site, and as you can see, the top of the tower will be visible. The second the second photographic simulation was taken, the photograph was taken to the west of the tower site. And in this one, the top of the tower will also be visible. The third photographic simulation was taken southwest of the site, and here too, the top of the tower will be visible. The fourth photographic simulation was taken south of the site, and the tower, the tower will not be visible from that site. On the fifth photographic simulation was taken southeast of the tower site, and the tower will not be visible from this location either. The sixth was taken southeast of the site, and the tower will not be visible. The eighth location was taken northeast of the site, and the tower will not be visible. And the ninth location was taken north of the tower site, and the tower will not be visible. And then the 10th location was taken north of the tower site, and just the very top of the tower will be visible. Excuse me, here's the 10th. And so I'd like to move on to demonstrate how the tower, how our application meets all of the requirements of the county's ordinance. I think it's undisputed that the application meets all of the technical requirements for a cell tower. And then we've also demonstrated in our application that the tower will not materially endanger the public health or safety. An improved wireless service is in great demand by county residents as more and more people rely upon their cell phones and the services that are available with their cell phones. It will also provide coverage for all of the major carriers, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Dish Network that currently have insufficient coverage. And again, it's a FirstNet site. And the public health and safety will be improved because those living, working, and traveling through the area will have better access to 911 services during times of emergencies. And then also the radio emissions will comply with all federal requirements and standards, including FCC standards. And then we've also provided a fall zone report that's been sealed by a North Carolina professional engineer. And the fall zone report states that that the tower is very unlikely to collapse, but that in the very unlikely event that the tower were to collapse, that it would buckle and that it would fall within a 50-foot radius, which means that the tower would fall completely within the Rayfield property. And then we've also provided information that the tower will not substantially injure the value of abutting property and that it's a public necessity. So adequate coverage in today's world is a public necessity. The tower, again, is located in a B2 zoning district and directly adjacent to commercial and the open space to the west. We've also provided a property report from Michael Berkowitz, who is a North Carolina certified real estate appraiser, and he's provided his expert opinion that the tower will not injure the value of nearby residential or commercial properties. And then finally, we presented evidence that the tower will be in harmony with the area. The parcel is wooded on the western portion of the property, and the tower will be not visible from the majority of the vantage points around the tower. Also, a cell tower is considered to be a very low impact use it will fit in well with the commercial and residential area, and it will not be a nuisance or hazard due to traffic, noise, odor. There'll be minimal sound, and there will be no odor associated with the tower. And there will also be very minimal traffic, only about 1 to 2 vehicle trips per month, and that's for maintenance purposes only. And the tower will not be lit. So we have also provided 5 proposed conditions. The first is that the height of the tower will not be greater than 160 feet with a 10-foot lightning rod for a total of 170 feet. The second condition is that the tower will not be lit. The third is that an easement will be offered to the Village of Marvin so that a trail can connect with the Village of Marvin. The fourth condition is that there will be a S2 screening around the fenced-in area. And the fifth condition is that the tower can be constructed, if the county prefers, as a pine tree, concealed pine tree, or a monopine as opposed to a monopole. And so I want to briefly address some of the arguments that you are going to hear tonight from those who are opposing our application. And they have made a number of arguments for reasons that they believe that the commissioner should deny the application because they don't want the tower to be located near their homes or businesses. But the information that has been provided and that will be provided this evening cannot be lawfully considered as a basis for denying our application. Our application meets all of the requirements of the ordinance, and we're entitled to approval of the application. One of the first arguments is a suggestion that there might not be a need for the tower and the improved coverage. We've clearly shown that there is inadequate coverage in the area, and we have evidence from AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile that there's insufficient coverage and that the coverage would be greatly improved with this tower. And then also, state and federal law does not allow local government to consider denying an application based upon the need for the tower. But I don't even think that the commissioners need to consider state or federal law here because we have clearly shown that there's inadequate coverage in the area. Then there is also, those who are opposing the tower have alleged several safety issues with the tower. The first issue that has been raised is about the fuel from the generator, and there's been some suggestion that the fuel from the generator might leak into McBride Branch. The tower is located 166 feet from the banks of McBride Branch, and the tower and the generator meet all state and federal environmental requirements and regulations, and those are in place to protect the watershed. And you will hear testimony from Stephen Howard with AT&T that there is no risk for spill of the fuel for the generator because the generator fuel is placed in secondary containment. And then there was another suggestion that the generator might be noisy. And you will also hear from Stephen Howard with AT&T that the generator emits very little sound when it's in operation. And the sound that will come from the generator would be less than the sound of a vacuum cleaner and consistent with a normal conversation, a sound of a normal conversation. So the generator will have very little sound and will certainly not be noisy. And then other arguments have been made that the tower might fall on the daycare property and that there might be ice during an ice storm that could fall and injure children playing on the daycare playground. And in support of those arguments, those who are opposing this application have relied upon pictures off of the internet. But these arguments, the courts would view these arguments as being speculative concerns and consider it to be not competent evidence that could not be considered. And so I'll begin with the argument about the fall zone. We have a fall zone letter that states that the tower is not going to fall, but in the unlikely event that the tower were to collapse, it will collapse entirely within the Brayfields property and not on any adjoining property. And there is no competent evidence that's been presented that that is not correct, that the tower would collapse on the property of the daycare. And then in regard to concerns about potentially ice from the tower, this too is a speculative and unsubstantiated concern that the courts would say could not be considered for denial of an application. And then I think more importantly, if you apply common sense, if there's an ice storm, children will not be playing on the playground during a significant ice storm. And then also consider whether there could even be any credible danger of injury from falling ice. Think about the metropolitan areas such as Charlotte and Raleigh where there are tall skyscrapers. And there's no credible danger of people walking through the downtown of Raleigh or Charlotte near the skyscrapers and having ice falling from the skyscrapers and injuring the people who walk among the buildings. And then in regard to the issue, the concern that it will hurt their property values, the information that those who are opposing the application has provided is also incompetent evidence that cannot be considered. And I want to make it clear for the record that I object to the evidence that those opposing this application have presented about property values. The opponents rely upon letters from real estate agents and brokers, and also an article that's been obtained from the internet from authors who live in Kentucky. They have provided no competent evidence from a North Carolina certified real estate appraiser that there will be any impact to property values. And North Carolina statutory law, which is North Carolina General Statute 160A-393, makes it clear that an opponent that wishes to demonstrate impact of property values must present expert testimony to support such a claim. And expert testimony must come from a certified real estate appraiser and not from realtors and brokers. So that evidence is incompetent and cannot be considered. And then finally, they've made arguments about harmony. Their objection is that the tower will be visible from some of their homes and that it will be located near the daycare center. And as I mentioned when I first began speaking, that a concealed tower such as a monopine is permitted by right in the B2 zoning district, and a monopole is permitted with a special use permit in this zoning district. And so the courts have said that that is a prima facie case that a tower is in harmony with the area. And so in regard to the argument that the tower might be visible from some locations, we've performed a balloon test, and the tower will not be visible from the majority of the vantage points. And the courts have also said that an objection to a use based upon the fact that it can be seen is irrelevant and cannot be a basis for denying an application. And then the fact that it's located near a daycare center, we have met all of the public safety requirements that are required by the county and by the state. And the county's ordinance does not have any special or increased setback requirements that are unique to a daycare facility or, for that example, or a school either. And I'm aware of no ordinance in North Carolina that carves out a daycare center or a school and says that you have to increase setback requirements for a daycare or for a school. And the reason that you don't have to carve out a daycare center is to require increased setbacks is because there's no increased danger to a daycare center or to a school from a tower. And so this application is in full compliance with the setback requirements. So we have met all requirements of the ordinance, and we are asking that the board approve our application. And I have several witnesses who are going to provide some additional testimony and evidence. So I'll call my first witness, who is Paul Prajjuti, who is the engineer for AT&T. And they are in the room next door.
Hello, Chairman.
Can you state your name?
Yep.
Name, business address, and by whom you are employed.
Okay. Paul Pachalko, Senior RF Design Engineer for AT&T. Address is 4100 South Stream Boulevard in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And can you describe in your own words, and please feel free to use the slides that have been prepared about the need for this particular tower.
Okay. This slide right here, the propagations that I provided for you, this is our current network coverage. So you can see around the proposed tower, the red area and the yellow area especially, that's real bad signal levels. Typically when you build a new site build, you want to have green and blue like these other surrounding sites. Green meaning the best signal level, which is like 4 bars on your phone. And the further out you go, the less power you have from the cell site. So of course you can have weaker signal because your power is reduced from being far away, right? So this next slide, this is what our customers and first responders will see at the site. So you can see green, which is pretty much full signal strength, and the blue, and then plus in the areas in the yellow. It's going to help out that area with coverage and capacity for the customers and first responders around that area.
Do you have any questions for Paul?
No, ma'am. No, sir. Anybody else have any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I'll call Stephen Howard with AT&T, who is in the room next door as well.
State your name, address.
My name is Stephen Howard. My address is 2002 Pisgah Church Road in Greensboro, 27455.
Mr. Howard, what is your position with AT&T?
I am the area manager for wireless real estate development. I oversee wireless development in North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia.
And I believe you heard information already about the benefits that this tower will provide to AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Dish Network, and FirstNet. But can you also provide the additional benefits to the county because the tower will be a FirstNet site?
Yes, FirstNet is the only dedicated platform in the country that brings first responders 24/7 priority access to the network, and it is a physically separate network core fully dedicated to public safety. So there are millions of FirstNet users, including several county, state, and local first responders who have, in North Carolina, who have signed up for the FirstNet service.
And I have some 3 exhibits that, can I pass around before I? Mr. Howard, I think you're aware that some of those who are opposing this application have argued that the fuel from the generator might spill into McBride Branch. Are you aware of that?
I have heard that, yes.
And in your opinion, is there any risk to the generator fuel spilling into McBride Branch?
No risk of spilling into the waterway.
I'm going to hand to you the first exhibit, which will be the applicant's Exhibit 1. And can you describe what this exhibit is?
This is the cut sheet for the generator that we use at our new site builds.
And what is the maximum amount of fuel that will be on site for AT&T's generator?
103 gallons.
And can you describe the protective measures that will be in place to ensure that the fuel does not spill?
So the tank it's a double-walled fuel tank.
And how many years have you been employed by AT&T?
16.
16 years. And during the 16 years that you've been employed by AT&T, are you aware of any instances when fuel from a generator has spilled?
I am not aware of any tank failures at any generator.
And so I'm going to move on to another question that has been raised by some of those who are opposing the application. Are you aware that some of the opponents have claimed the generator might be noisy?
I have heard that claim.
And will the generator have sound attenuation measures? And if so, can you describe those measures?
Yes, there'll be an enclosure. It'll be muffled, and there will be an enclosure around the unit.
And I've just handed to you what will be marked as applicant's Exhibit 2, and can you describe that?
It's the sound measurements taken at on a 100-foot diameter asphalt surface, so there's no sound attenuation from buildings or trees or anything like that, or fence. It's just an open parking lot, essentially. And under full load, at a distance of 7 meters, the generator sound levels would be 65 dB on average.
And by 7 meters, that's also 23 feet.
23 feet, yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And so I'm going to hand to you the third exhibit, which will be identified as applicant's Exhibit 3. Can you identify that, please?
It's just a table that describes decibel level comparisons.
And can you describe the comparison of the 65 dBA that will be heard at 23 feet from the generator when the generator is operating?
It would be somewhere in the range between sounds you would expect to hear in a business office or normal conversation. Quieter than a vacuum cleaner.
Okay. And how frequently will the generators be in operation?
The generator is remotely exercised between 1.5 and 2.5 hours per month.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. And I would ask that the applicant's Exhibits 1, 2, and 3 be made part of the record. Do you have any questions for Mr. Howard?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. And our next witness will be
Thank you.
Jason. Our next witness will be Jason Grosclose, who also is in the room next door.
If you would state your name, address.
Yes, sir. My name is Jason Grossclose. My address is 1900 Century Place, Northeast, Atlanta, Georgia. I am the Senior Program Manager for City Switch.
And Mr. Grosclose, our application shows that AT&T will be the first carrier to locate on the tower. And in addition to AT&T, have you received letters of support from any additional carriers?
Yes, I have. We've gotten letters of support from Verizon and Dish Wireless as well.
And have you received a letter of support from T-Mobile as well?
And T-Mobile, sorry, yes.
Okay. So all three of the major carriers, in addition to AT&T, are supporting this tower.
That's correct.
And from the information that's included in those letters, do Verizon, T-Mobile, and Dish Network have adequate coverage in the area where the tower will be located?
They do not. None of the major carriers have adequate coverage in this area currently.
And have you been involved with City Switch in efforts to find a location for a new cell tower in the area where coverage is needed?
Yes.
And can you describe your efforts to find a suitable location for a new cell tower?
This has been a multi-year effort, several options evaluated, with only one, the current location, being a willing participant and a site that meets the criteria of the normal ordinance for telecommunications towers. So this is the only option after multiple years that's available to meet this need.
And Mr. Grosclose, are you aware that some of the people who are opposing our application object to the tower being located the fall zone distance from the property line of the daycare
I do.
center?
Yes.
Are you aware that the Union County ordinance makes it clear that towers can be located the distance of the engineered fall zone for the property lines?
Yes,
And does the tower meet the ordinance's setback requirement?
it does.
And has Sabre Industries provided a fall zone letter from a North Carolina professional engineer?
Yes.
And does this letter state that in the unlikely event that the tower were to collapse, that the fall zone radius for the tower and the lightning rod would be 50 feet?
Yes.
And so that means that in the very unlikely event of collapse of the tower would fall entirely on the property for the cell tower.
That is correct.
And does Sabre's design for the cell tower include several safety features?
It does.
I'm going to hand to you Sabre's December 14th, 2021 letter that is included with our application materials. And can you read the second paragraph of the letter?
Absolutely. When designed according to this standard, the wind pressures and steel strength capacities include several safety factors. Therefore, it is highly unlikely that the monopole will fail structurally in a wind event where the design wind speed is exceeded within the range of the built-in safety factors. In addition, it is unlikely that the loading effects due to extreme atmospheric icing would cause a structural failure because monopoles are not ice-sensitive structures.
Mr. Grosclose, can you explain what is meant by stating that a monopole is not an ice-sensitive structure?
So ice-sensitive meaning that even though ice could accumulate on the pole, if it does, the structure itself is highly unlikely to fail because of excessive ice loading, just because of the sheer design of the structure itself.
And Mr. Grosclose, are you aware that the planning staff has confirmed that our application meets the technical requirements for wireless cell towers?
Yes.
And did City Switch go beyond the requirements of the ordinance?
We did.
And what did City Switch do in excess of what is required by the ordinance?
So knowing that there was a concern from the community, we held the community meeting, even though it was not required by the ordinance.
Excuse me, not the community meeting, balloon test.
And the balloon test. Sorry.
Correct the record, the community meeting was required by the ordinance.
Sorry, balloon test, and we held the community meeting, sorry.
And did you attend the community meeting?
I did.
And are you aware that during the community meeting, at least one of those who participated in the community meeting suggested that they would like to see the tower be designed as a monopine or a pine tree?
Yes.
And are you willing to agree to a condition that the tower would be designed and constructed as a monopine rather than a monopole?
Yes, if that's what's needed, we will, yes.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Grace, please.
Okay.
And I have one final witness, Michael Berkowitz, who is in the room next door as well.
If you would state your name and address, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Michael Berkowitz. My address is 1100 Sundance Drive, Concord, North Carolina.
Mr. Berkowitz, can you describe your current occupation?
I am a certified general appraiser in the state of North Carolina and South Carolina.
And can you describe your education and work experience in real estate appraisal?
My undergraduate degree is in economics from Duke University. Since that time, I've taken a plethora of appraisal classes over the years.
And are you certified as a North Carolina general real estate appraiser?
Yes, I am.
And did you attach your CV or your qualifications to your impact study that is part of the application?
Yes, I did.
And I would tender Mr. Berkowitz as an expert in the field of real estate appraisal. And can you tell the board what you were tasked to do as it pertains to City Switch's application?
The scope of my assignment was to determine whether the proposed tower as designed would impact, substantially injure the property values of adjacent or abutting properties.
Can you explain to the board, in your own words, the contents of your report and the conclusions that you reached?
Certainly. There were two ways to be able to look at this as far as to determine whether the market shows or reflects if there is an impact. There's an empirical study, which there are several examples provided in the report, including one that is actually on that map, which is in the southeast corner on Providence Road. The empirical evidence, that was a tower that is 277 feet tall. It's a lattice tower, and it also has a light on top of it, and is adjacent to a subdivision in which the visual impact was much more significant than the proposed tower. Regardless, the market data shows that the sales with views of that tower were not impacted by the view of the tower. They were right in line with all the other sales in the subdivision that did not have a view of the tower. The goal of the empirical or paired sales analysis is to isolate the one factor. If you have the exact same sale, the exact same property, one with the view of a cell tower, one without, that would be an excellent match pair. So the empirical evidence did not support anything. The second piece was whether to determine that, on a qualitative basis. Well, it shows that the examples that were provided in there were showing that not only is the empirical, but everywhere that I have been in this area have shown that cell towers do not impact residential property values, especially for a siting such as this.
Mr. Berkowitz, did you also consider whether the proposed cell tower would impact commercial property values in the area?
Yes, I did. What I also looked at, I was asked to look at institutional properties as well. I've never seen a commercial property. Just recently, I was working one where there was a cell tower next to a Home Depot. So the commercial values, there is no impact on the utility of the properties, of commercial properties, to be able to use that property for those purposes. But there was concern that was brought up with regards to a daycare facility and the use of children. Well, it's been my experience, and in fact, I did a study for the town of Matthews with respect to towers being on institutional properties. There are several schools in the area that have cell towers, churches, parks, things of that nature, in which there are certainly areas with which they would be influenced on the outside basis as far as their enjoyment of that land. I believe Cuthbertson High School has one cell tower on their site as well. But those were the studies that I did as far as commercial property, in that it does not impact the functional utility of those properties and consequently does not impact their value.
And can you describe what your ultimate conclusion is after performing your analysis?
It is my professional opinion that the tower as proposed will not substantially injure the value of adjacent or abutting properties.
That's all the questions I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. This went on for a little while.
Okay, the first person up.
Commissioner Rape, Chairman Rape, I have a clarification I'd like to make to the board, just so that we understand what's going on here tonight. I do want to point out that this is not an evidentiary hearing. This is not a quasi-judicial proceedings. This is a legislative rezoning hearing, which means that there is no entitlement for cross-examination of anyone who comes up here to speak. This is for people to give their questions, their concerns, their opinions about the application there is. So I just want to clarify that you have a list of individuals who'd like to speak. It is their right to simply give you their opinions as well as their concerns or what they may like about the project. But I wanted to clarify, this is not an evidentiary hearing. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them. I think Bill might have just something else to finish up. Did you have something else? Okay, close out the PowerPoint. But I just wanted to make that clarification in case the board was confused on that. Thank you.
First one up is Iori OMO. The next one up after her will be Claire Autry. State your name and address, please, ma'am.
There you go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Iori Ojomo, and I'm the owner of Children's Lighthouse Daycare Center on Railroad. This daycare center has been here for 10 years, and I'm here to make sure it's here another 10 years from now. This daycare is home to hundreds of children who are here every day from 6:30 in the morning to 6:30 p.m. every single day. This daycare creates many jobs, pays a lot of taxes, and serves this community well. The continued existence of this daycare is challenged by the proposed location of this cell tower. As a business owner, I'm terrified about the devastating effect this tower will do to my business. My parents will not keep their children in the daycare that has a cell tower looming over their children when they are playing. What makes this even worse is that this 170-feet tower will be only 50 feet away from the playground where these children play every day. If this gets built, it will destroy my business. As a parent, I worry for the safety of these children. If this tower collapses, these children will be directly in its path. If this tower catches fire, the fire will be 50 feet away from these children. When it snows and ice forms on the tower, the children will be directly under these missiles when these ice are falling down. Are you willing to put these children at the risk of the sake of cell phone tower? I have been in many meetings about this tower, and not once has anyone guaranteed that the tower will not fall and destroy everything in its path. Even their engineers, fault zone lacks any specific certainty. They keep using the words highly unlikely. What if it really happens? If an engineer cannot be certain that this tower will fall on the playground where these children play every day, then this is not the right location for this tower. Many counties now insist on a minimum fault zone equal to the height of the tower itself. Some have even gone more conservative where a school or daycare is involved, no one wants to be responsible for placing these children in harm's way. This 170-foot tower does not belong behind a daycare, especially 50 feet away. When these children kick their ball, it's going to be right there. It is the children of this community that will be put in danger if this tower is built. The planning department said no. The planning board said no. The community is saying no. I beg you tonight to say no. I hope your vote reflects the wishes of the community tonight. Thank you.
Let me say one thing. Since we have such a big crowd here tonight, we usually, it's a 3-minute comment period. And so since we don't have our usual assistant manager, I'm gonna try to time you. And, when I tell you we're over, I would appreciate you respecting that. If you would, you can, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
You're fine. Good evening. My name is Claire Autry. I'm the director of Children's Lighthouse Learning Center on Ray Road. My parents and teachers all wanted to be here tonight, but since they can't be here, I'll be speaking on their behalf. Is it true that there's going to be a cell tower behind our playground? What do we need to do to stop this? Why can't they put this somewhere else far away from our kids? These are just a few questions that I'm getting from the parents every day. My parents are very worried about this tower and what it means for the safety and the well-being of their children. My parents have told me clearly that they will leave if this tower goes up behind our daycare. There are no amounts of talking points or studies that will remove my parents' concerns with having a giant cell tower hovering above their children. All they see is danger to their children, and a natural reaction is to get their children away from danger. Our daycare is a safe space for many children over the years. This tower is going to destroy this. How do you keep a daycare open when all the parents are afraid about their children's safety? I am told that the environmental concerns were cited as one of the reasons for moving this tower to this proposed location. This proposed location is a 170-foot tower that is 50 feet from the playground of the daycare center. It is shocking that the safety of our children was not given the same consideration when picking this location for the tower. The safety and the well-being of our children should always be a priority. I have been at Children's Lighthouse for over 7 years, and some of my teachers have been there even longer. The idea that this tower will destroy everything that we've worked so hard for over several years is troubling. My teachers worry consistently about their jobs because of this. My parents are extremely concerned and feel helpless. When you cast your vote tonight, I urge that you think about the hundreds of lives that will be affected badly if this tower goes up behind our daycare center. I want you to think about how many children who will be forced to leave our daycare because of concerns about safety. I want you to think about the financial devastation to my boss and friend, Ms. Ajomo, who has put everything she has into creating a second home for my parents, my children, my teachers, and myself. Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak.
Okay, next we have Jill Denton. And one thing I would like to say, when we have a public hearing like this and we have opposition, we usually don't vote the same night. It'll be on the next agenda. So we will take all comments into consideration, but there will not be a vote tonight.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jill Dunton. I live at 2030 Rocky Hollow Drive in the 55-plus community of Amber Meadows, located in the village of Marvin, Union County. I am opposed to the rezoning location of this proposed cell tower. This tower would be visible from every rear window of our newly built home, as well as from our dining room table where we gather daily with family and friends. This tower would be in close proximity and would be visible with approximately 140 feet above the tree line from every single one of the 88 homes in the Amber Meadows and Tullamore communities. These are photographs showing the view from our patio without a tower and with the tower superimposed into the picture. There is no doubt that this will affect our property value along with the many other homeowners with the same view. This location and height of this rendition is accurate with the assistance from a licensed professional drone operator. This evening, we are speaking on behalf of the Tullamore Homeowners Association, the Amber Meadows Homeowners Association, and the Canterfield Creek Homeowners Association, all which are in Union County. We are opposed to the 170-foot tower. We are here today to provide comments in opposition to the application City Switch has filed with Union County to build the tower. In our presentation to you this evening, we will outline how, number one, the tower would not advance the public safety, health, or welfare. Number two, the tower would not would not be in harmony with the surrounding community, and it would adversely affect property values. Number three, the site location that the applicant has chosen is irresponsible and not appropriate. Number four, the tower is not in the community interest. Thank you for providing this time for me and the speakers who will follow.
Ms. Tanya O'Malley.
McCauley. Hi.
O'Malley.
My name is Tanya McCauley. I live in the Tullamore neighborhood in Union County. I'm here to address the issue of public safety. One of the most considerations we believe for a tower application most important is that of public safety, health, or welfare. We argue that this tower is not needed for any of those reasons, and in actuality could potentially harm public safety, health, and welfare. The applicant contends that public safety is to be interpreted as first responder usage. In fact, Union County intends to erect their own 380-foot tower some a mile away, which will meet the county's own first responder needs. The applicant suggests that the tower is needed to provide FirstNet with coverage. FirstNet provides cell service to first responders. According to FirstNet's own website, and shown here on the screen, FirstNet currently has full coverage at and around the location of the proposed tower, so we are unsure as to why they say they need coverage, unless their website is wrong. We submit that a broader and equally important interpretation of public safety would be the safety to the Union County residents and Union County businesses. This location in no way meets the safety considerations. The most obvious point of safety failure is that the tower is to be erected with its center 50 feet from a daycare playground area. In spite of the tower being 170 feet tall and the engineered fall zone somehow being only 50 feet, as claimed by the applicant, cell towers do also catch on fire. We would logically assume that these towers were certified by a licensed engineer, yet they still caught on fire. These, yes, were taken from the internet, but they are real towers in the United States that caught on fire. And if you look at our memorandum, it gives you the states in which these towers exist. They also fall. Even with an engineer certification, they can fall. Do we want a 170-foot tower only 50 feet from a playground? Towers also shed ice after a sleet storm. As you'll see from this video, this is ice falling off a monopole. Ice buildup is common in our area, as you know, and if you look at our memorandum, you'll find an article which states these falling ice fragments weigh over 100 pounds and hit the ground at 70 miles an hour. So children might not be playing outside, but there are windows. The playground will be, they'll hit the windows of the playground, the windows of the daycare that the kids are inside of. We as a community must consider everything that could potentially happen when this tower will overshadow a daycare. We can logically assume that all of these similar towers that I've shown you had similar engineer certifications, and yet disasters happened. Here's a tower in Massachusetts that fell. It did not fall within itself, as claimed by the applicant. Thank you so much for your time.
Next, Dahlia Hartman.
Hi, my name is Dahlia Hartman. I live at Amber Meadows in Union County. I will be addressing our concerns regarding the applicant's hired engineer's letter. In his report, the engineer certifies that a 170-foot tower has a fall zone of only 50 feet. We believe that that does not satisfy the fail-safety design that should be required when a tower sits atop a child daycare facility. For safety, many municipalities require towers be at a minimum fall zone equal to their height. Some require 1.5 times the tower height. The engineer states that the tower is designed to standards. That means that the tower is basically highly unlikely to fail if wind speeds are within the range of built-in safety factors. The implication is that the tower might or might not fail if winds do in fact exceed the design range. The stated range reference is 112 miles per hour. We know that tornadic winds and hurricanes far exceed this wind speed and do occur in our area. On September 20th, 2021, a tornado took out a 150-foot monopole tower. He adds that if failure does occur, the most likely location of the failure will be at the tower base plate. Does that mean that the tower will topple to its full length? The engineer states that assuming the wind pressure profile is like that used in the design, the monopole will buckle at the location of the highest stress point within the shaft, and it will fall in a radius of 50 feet. With additional vendor equipment, couldn't it be 60, 70, or 80 feet? None of his assertions are definite, so how can we believe that the tower is safe? Beyond engineering, you cannot engineer out all accidents. Just ask the many workers who are injured every day by falling objects while servicing tower facilities. Unfortunately, with only 50 feet fall zone to work with, falling objects will not necessarily be limited to workers. We will have daycare children within falling distance who could as well be injured. Commissioners, do you believe that your children or grandchildren will be safe playing under this tower? I don't. In summary, a 50-foot fall zone for a 170-foot tower with all attached devices does not meet the test of common sense. Furthermore, we are not comforted by the tone nor the content of the engineering letter, nor do we believe that it supports a 50-foot fall zone. Based on all consideration presented by Tanya and myself, it seems obvious that the proposed tower location would not meet the standard of public safety, health, and welfare. Thank you.
Next is Christy Brown.
Good evening. My name's Christy Braun. I live in the Canterfield Creek neighborhood in Waxhaw, Union County. As you know, one of the criteria for the tower siting is that the tower will not substantially injure the value of the abutting property and is in harmony with the surrounding area. The applicant provided the county with an impact statement stating that it will be in harmony and that it would have no impact at all on the values of residents and businesses surrounding the tower. We, the homeowners, strongly agree or disagree. The hired consultant addresses the community character question by stating flatly that the tower would be in harmony with the community, which is ludicrous. In fact, this tower is 170 feet tall, which is roughly the size of a 15-story building, when in fact there's no structure more than three stories tall or 30 feet within 1.5 miles of this location. There's also 27 immediately adjacent upscale townhome residences and 5 single-story light commercial businesses immediately in this location, as well as the daycare center. There are also 6 or more neighborhoods of single-family residences in all directions. This proposed location is no more than 80 steps off of Ray Road, which is an attractive suburban commuter corridor with a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. There is no industrial or multi-story commercial development anywhere in this area, nor is there anything like transmission lines, railroads, or any other major right-of-ways. As you can see from this slide, the area is mostly purely suburban. There is simply nothing remotely like this proposed tower in any rational proximity in any direction. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Hello. Good evening. I'm Marcia Folnsby. I'm a Union County resident in Canterfield Creek. I'm also a realtor by trade. I oppose the cell tower. And with regard to the impact on real estate values caused by cell towers, I do disagree with Mr. Berkowitz. The consultant states that he does not foresee a resulting impact on real estate values from this tower location. I do believe that his opinion should not be considered because the comparable homes that he chose and admits are not homes that are comparable to the homes in the surrounding area of the proposed site. He also admits that with 24 tower locations in Union County, he was only able to find 3 comparable properties, and there's a good reason for the lack of comparables. It's that they're simply not erected in residential areas like this. When they are, these homes take longer to sell, and they often sell for less than market value. None of the 3 towers referenced are situated similarly to this proposed tower site, where there's an open line of view to hundreds of luxury homes and virtually no tree screening in between. You can review the 5 letters submitted by local realtors, including myself, as Exhibit E in our memorandum. Each of these professionals do business in our area regularly. Each agree that the values would in fact be negatively impacted. A commercial real estate owner additionally expressed his concerns about how his commercial real estate property would be negatively impacted, stating that a wireless tower would alter the value of our property with a substantial decrease in value, therefore making it virtually impossible to sell. The collection of letters unanimously agree that there would in fact be a detrimental impact on residential and commercial real estate values. And according to the National Association of Realtors, 94% of people polled say that they would be less interested in or would pay less for a home that was located in close proximity to a cell tower. 74% would under no circumstances rent or purchase a property within a few blocks of a cell tower. The next 2 pictures show how the tower will look from our homes. The picture is taken from a backyard of a homeowner who is going to have direct sight of the tower. The next slide is taken from a neighborhood further away and also has direct line of sight to the tower. There are hundreds of houses with this same view. A cell tower at this location will cause significant disruption to the harmony of the surrounding area, and I oppose further consideration. Thank you.
David Schaub. It seems as I get older, people write their names smaller and smaller. State your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is David Schaub, and I live at 311 Walker's Bluff Court in the Union County Tullamore neighborhood, and I am concerned about the proposed site location. City Switch cannot build the tower on the location by right, as it is not an industrial zone. The location is zoned B2 conditional use, which accommodates small-scale commercial development with a maximum height of 35 feet. This location's B2 zoning was established to allow for limited commercial development while enabling the sale of houses in nearby Amber Meadows and Tullamore neighborhoods. A 170-foot tower is in no way small scale. The B2 zoning clearly was not meant to incorporate such a tower. This picture shows a 170-foot tower looming over a 40-foot building. City Switch is looking to sidestep B2's small-scale limitations through its conditional zoning application. It is asking the board to ignore the 35-foot limitation on this parcel next to residential neighborhoods. The applicant knows that this tower is appropriate for an industrial zone, and putting it in the small-scale B2 zone is outrageous. The applicant's attorney also claims that this tower is a necessity. It is not. It is merely a tool to increase corporate profit at the expense of great risk to the community. AT&T has stated that tower rent prices are increasing and working with City Switch is more cost-effective. In this article, Susan Johnson, Vice President of AT&T, says, working with City Switch means more alternatives to the traditional tower leasing model, still followed by many. The traditional model isn't cost-effective or sustainable. Actions taken to save money by using City Switch towers may be legitimate business actions. However, those benefits are felt by AT&T's shareholders, not by Union County residents. AT&T's website shows coverage all around the tower location. There is no need for additional coverage in this area. The proposed tower is not about public benefit. The applicant is turning a blind eye to the potential danger to the community. It doesn't care about catastrophic injuries that may occur and relies on a biased engineering report claiming it is highly unlikely the pole will fail structurally in a wind event within design limitations. But that means there is a reasonable possibility it could fail even within design limitations. And if a greater wind occurs, which it surely could, then all bets are off. The likelihood of failure could be anything, even 100% with a high wind. If the pole fails, children on the playground may be injured, or worse. Furthermore, the report says that within design limitations, it is only likely that the monopole will lean over for a fall radius of 40 feet. That means there could be a 49% chance of a greater fall radius that would be created, and children on the playground could be grievously injured. The applicant's attempt to categorize the proposed rezoning as a public necessity is improper, misguided, and should be ignored. It is simply a tactic to increase corporate revenue without regard to the significant chance of extreme community damage. Thank you.
Sean, so
good evening. My name is Sean Soule. I live in Union County in the Marvin community of Tullamore, and I speak in opposition to the proposed tower location. In addition to David's comments on zoning, this parcel is a leftover sliver of land that is roughly 250 feet wide and 900 feet long. It is a small buffer sitting within a flood zone that is wedged between developed parcels and an area that includes a stream and protected wetlands. It sits atop a sloping bank which drains into the stream and the wetlands. Various environmental restrictions apply to the property as the wetlands immediately below this site involve Corps of Engineers and NC State environmental regulations. NC staff confirmed the existence of a 200-foot endangered species buffer along the stream located at the bottom of the slope. The proposed tower would be within this buffer. Tower construction is, however, allowed only because the applicant's engineer estimates that less than 1 acre would be disturbed. There are, however, other considerations, such as the presence of 4 tanks with up to 100 gallons of diesel fuel each. There is no guarantee that the surrounding area and wetlands would not be impacted in the event of a spill or accident. As to the view shed impact on homes, the applicant's balloon test and photo simulations are misleading and disingenuous. The applicant submits 10 photos from within a half-mile radius with the conclusion that only 4 homes or for 40% of locations would have a view of the tower. The photos chosen are from carefully selected locations and do not reflect the true visual impact. The only photo taken from Amber Meadows, the closest neighborhood to the proposed site, was from the community entrance at one far edge. Not one photo was actually taken from inside the neighborhood. Another nearby neighborhood, Tullamore, would have the same unencumbered view of the tower. Only one photo was taken from this neighborhood, and is taken at the extreme back edge down a cul-de-sac. The second closest neighborhood to the tower site is a collection of luxury townhomes that sit approximately 700 feet away. Not one photo was taken from that neighborhood, even though it has public streets and easy access. We ask you to consider instead the photographs we have just shown you. They were taken by a professional drone operator and are clearly labeled. The drone was suspended right behind the daycare at a height of exactly 160 feet in the exact location where the applicant has proposed building the tower. The applicant's balloon test is flawed, and its assertion that the tower would not be visible from a majority of locations in the area is incorrect and it's misleading. It fails to provide an accurate assessment of the view shed and the impact this massive tower would have. The balloon test should be ignored. We absolutely agree with the Planning Board's conclusion that this location is not appropriate for the tower's proposed site. Thank you.
Jana Vale. Ma'am, I can't.
She's going to pass.
Okay. Grayvale,
There you go.
Gary.
It's one of the few times I get to speak instead of my wife, I'll have to tell you that. My name's Gary Vale. I do live in Union County, in Marvin. I appreciate the detail to which the applicant went to point out the opposition's position for us. I'm not sure we'd have thought of all that stuff by ourselves. And she gave you a list of things you couldn't deny. Luckily, she didn't apply common sense. So that's what I'm going to ask, that we talk about these things using a little common sense. First, you have an opposed community. We've talked about the petition, 400 no votes. We talked about the resident letters you've been given. We talked about the opposition resolution that Marvin gave you. You have an opposed community. To try to address the approval criteria, City Switch provided an impact study and a hired consultant from whom you've heard this evening. From 24 different Union County tower locations, he found 3 homes for comparison, which are poor matches. Yet he flatly states there is no impact on property values. His biographical information didn't mention if he was a home appraiser or just a commercial appraiser. On the other hand, we cite several national studies confirming the negative impact of cell towers, and we provided letters from 5 local realtors who actually market these properties in the market every day. All state that the property value will be negatively impacted. That consultant also concluded no impact on the value of the daycare, which is exactly the opposite of what they're hearing from their concerned parents. He then tries to explain how a 165-foot tower will be in harmony with the community. But there is no structure anywhere near that's even 30 feet high, no industrial, no heavy commercial. The area is almost purely suburban residential housing, and that heavily wooded tree screen that they allude to, according to the drone operator, is roughly 40 feet on average. The tower is 165 feet. To build this tower, the applicant needs a zoning amendment. If current zoning were industrial, the applicant pointed out that it would be permitted by right, and she's right. But it's not industrial, for good reason. This was intended by Marvin to be small scale and low intensity use. To change this site zoning just to permit this freestanding tower seems to be a bad precedent to us. We don't see the logic, and it doesn't seem to fit the Marvin vision of village. And finally, we have public safety. The tower itself, the location, is 50 feet from a daycare playground, as we've said. The engineers reference a 50-foot fall zone. But even if that were possible, there's no safety margin, whatever. Engineer fall zone certifications use words like unlikely and most likely when they give parameters. There's little certainty. Wind testing was done to 112 mile per hour. That's an F1 tornado. F2s and 3s are not uncommon, and the Kentucky storms recently reminded us what tornadoes can do. So what can go wrong? Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's false. Towers can burn, they can fall. They can collect ice in storms, particularly the vendor packages, which then falls. You have servicing involving workmen using tools and parts working overhead. We understand unlikely. We understand most likely. But that's a real daycare with real children underneath it. And we don't think it's worth the risk, and we don't think the trade-off is good for the greater good. Bottom line, the applicant has to meet approval. We're not sure they've done that in this case, and we're pretty sure they have not. Your planning board decided this was a uniquely inappropriate location. We totally agree with that, and we ask you to agree with that when you vote. Thank you very much.
Carlos Alvarez.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. I am Carlos Alvidres. I'm a resident of Union County in Marvin, Tullamore. There's just a couple of points that I would like to make about residual risk. I'm an engineer and a risk manager, and whenever you hear about, there being no risk, that's really non-existent. There's always residual risk. So I'd ask you to consider that as you go through the application process. Also, I'd like to read from the Charlotte Observer a couple of paragraphs from an article from December 2018 around ice falling from skyscrapers. If I may. Charlotte Mecklenburg Police shut down an uptown street Monday, this is December 2018, after reports of ice falling from the Duke Energy Center as a winter storm departed the Carolinas. Police closed Stonewall Street between Tyrone and Church Streets and, in a tweet, asked travelers to find an alternate route. Wells Fargo, which owns the 48-story tower, confirmed that ice was dropping from the building. Warning signs and protective scaffolding were placed over the building's entrances and exits. Another point that I would like to make is that even if the tower is engineered to fall within a 50-feet radius, that leaves zero margin of error. And I don't think that is wise. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Bob Vogel.
Bob Vogel, Amber Meadows. Good evening. I'd like to focus a little more time on the engineer's report. And one of the things that stands out to me is the fact that this letter only applies to the above referenced monopole. So it appears that they have not taken into consideration any of the peripherals that will be installed on this, so any of the antennas. So basically, what they're saying is, okay, we're putting a sail on a mast, but we're not taking that into consideration. So that would have even more of a drag and cause more of a problem with the monopole than what the engineer is stating here. A lot of things I was going to talk about, like the wind speed of only 112 miles per hour is really very low wind speed. I mean, we're talking about 130 miles per hour is when our roof shingles, the fiberglass roof shingles will fly off our house. So 112 is really not that high. I also want to talk about the fall zone, the way they came up with the fall zone, and what they're saying in this engineer's report. It would the likely result is a portion of the monopole leaning over. So if you look at that from the perspective of it's most likely at the base plate to break, and it leans over. If it leans over 17% from vertical, where it came from, that's encroaching right on the property line to that children's nursery. So even if it stopped there, 17% at that angle, I'm guessing that it would cause a panic. and the nursery school would have to start to evacuate, and I'm sure they have emergency phone numbers and contacts to get in touch with the parents of these children, but, you know, how much time would that take? So that's going to be close to an impossibility. So that's at a 17% buckle at the base plate. If it went down to 45%, if it fell down from vertical to 45% from the buckle at the base, so, and there's a 50-foot distance in the setback, basically 69 feet of that tower would be overhead of the nursery school property, would be looming over their head. And, you know, eventually, who knows if they could take that down without dropping it, or it would eventually just fall from the weight on its own. So the intent of engineered fall zone setback regulation is to provide protection to adjoining properties from the danger of a tower falling and to diminish the noise and visual impact from a tower. The boundaries of new development should never encroach upon airspace of adjacent properties. But when that tower is falling over that 50-foot fall zone over the property of either any other property, to the east is the nursery school, and to the north is the custard, Andy's Custard. So any infraction in their airspace is a threat to them, even if it doesn't fall. Potential monopole structural failure places unnecessary
Mr.
burden
Vogel.
on abutting properties
Mr.
and
Vogel.
hardship for the daycare and Andy's.
I hate it, but your time is up.
Time is up?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Galtan Patel. Gautam Patel. That's the last one on the list. There he comes.
Mr. Patel does not need to speak. Is there anyone else on the list?
No, that's the last one.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes the public comments of the zoning hearing. And as I said, I'll turn it back over to Bjorn, but there, we don't anticipate, we're not going to have a vote tonight on this.
No, so that concludes the public hearing, the information that was presented. Otherwise, we'll schedule this for the second meeting in December, or in January.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm sorry. At this time, we'll close the public hearing. I feel tested by fire. Okay. On the agenda, item 21-536 is an opportunity for a hearing by NIP Law Office PLLC regarding a request for a refund of an overpayment of excise tax paid to the Register of Deeds office. Is anyone present who wishes to comment from NIP Law Office PLLC? Anybody here from the law firm? If not, consideration of this request will be item 21-537 on the consent agenda. Okay. Next one, item 21-538, opportunity for hearing by claimant Tony C. Johnson, attorney at law, regarding request of refund of excise tax paid to the Register of Deeds office. If it is anyone present who wishes to comment from Tony G. Johnson, attorney at law. If not, consideration of this request will be item 21-538 on the consent agenda. Okay, we were on 21-545. Deputy Miles is unable to be with us tonight, so we'll move this to our next meeting. Okay, does anybody, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I do want to remove one myself, waiting on moving it to the next meeting, 21-559, the one that has to do with the spotter truck for Public Works. And Commissioner Simpson.
I'd like to ask 21-554 to be added to the regular meeting, please.
Okay, two votes here, right?
Actually, with the new rules procedure, that automatically goes to the regular agenda.
All right, need a motion to approve the amended consent agenda. Got a motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The last few meetings have gave me a whole new appreciation for Richard and Jerry. Okay, on our business, first up, 21-546. Bjorn, I believe you're going to handle that. The Union County 2050 Implementation Committee member appointments.
Yes, sir. This is a follow-up from your November meeting where we asked for a solicitation period to recruit committee members for a series of focused topics coming out of the 2050 Comprehensive Plan, where the plan made recommendations that we should do something about these issues. These are then the committees that are going to figure out what is that something. And we started the process after the plan was adopted in August. We made appointment recommendations based on this process after a 1-month input period where we recruited volunteers. Again, these are the 6 strategies: stormwater development standards, school siting requirements, open space in rural areas, cluster allowance in rural areas, the litter task force, and broadband internet. The results, we had 74 applicants. It was about 50-50 male-female. Also, the percent that was inside a municipality was also roughly equivalent to what it is in Union County right now, about 70% inside a municipality, 30% in unincorporated. We broke it down by zip code, and we think there was good geographic dispersion there as well. We will note what you see in red. Back in November, we recommended these committees have 5 members. However, based on the good response we had, we wanted to up that to 7. We thought that would give us a little bit extra insurance in case people drop off the committees or can't attend any specific meetings. So we made recommendations for 7. And what you have in these slides are the actual recommendations by committee. So I'm not going to go into the names necessarily, but you'll see the zip codes, whether they're inside a municipality or not, and their gender. I will note that in terms of the filtering points that we used was relevant technical experience, then relevant organizational experience. Have they served on boards and committees before? Have they had to do the tough work of balancing considerations? Also, geographic distribution throughout the county and gender. Municipal consideration wasn't that much of a consideration after you balance for all those other things. School setting requirements. It's not all outside of a municipality, just didn't work like that in terms of the people that we had available. Open space in rural areas. Again, a combination of in and out of municipalities. I will note several of these names you'll recognize. They are either on our planning board or they already served on committees through the 2050 comprehensive plan process. We thought that was a positive thing that we didn't wear them out. We had more than a dozen people who wanted to participate again in implementing. They didn't all get recommended to get put back on committees because we had a lot of balancing considerations, but quite a few did. In this particular list, I can see 2 familiar names. Same thing here, cluster standards in rural areas. There's at least 1 member from the comprehensive plan subcommittees. And the litter task force, and Loretta did make it on the list. We're not that dumb. So, so there's at least 2 members of the Union County 2050 plan committees that are on this list as well, because Archie was the overall chairman of the process. He also wanted to participate again. Broadband internet, very hot button issue. There are 3 members of the plan committee from agriculture, business that are on there. So the requested action is to appoint the members to the 6 committees. We would start the meeting process as soon as possible, notify people, both who did and did not get appointed to a committee this week, and then send out the doodle polls to identify when we can start this meeting process. It'll probably be a combination of in-person and virtual like it was last year as well. But otherwise, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
David, Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bjorn, could you summarize for us again these 6 committees? Can you tell us what the 6 committees are?
Sure. So these are the 6 committees, and these are committees that require us to either recommended changes to our ordinance, come up with policies, come up with potential investments. I'm really looking at the broadband internet when I think of that one. But it's just saying we need to know the what that we're going to do here. We know that we're going to do something, but we need to know the what is. And of course, you guys are going to be the ultimate decision makers to say whether you accept these recommendations or whether you tweak them.
So the recommendations that we as a board tabled back in, I think it was back in August, committees have not been.
There are 2 topics that were tabled. One was about the Rural Water Authority, and the other was about the tying together of rezonings and funded road improvements. We should be coming back with the one about the funded road improvements and rezoning policy, potentially at the next meeting or at the first meeting in February. I don't have any status update for the Rural Water Authority, though.
Okay, but to the extent the board acts affirmatively on, 1 or more of those, will we need to revisit the implementation committee structure here?
No, those are separate issues.
Okay.
Yeah, the one about the rezoning, that's just a policy. We're going to give it to you guys. If you like it, you can approve it, and then we'll immediately start utilizing it in evaluating rezonings as they come across our desks and onto yours.
Would either of these recommendations that were tabled require supporting text amendments?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, the one about the rezonings is just a policy. The other one regarding the Rural Water Authority, that's a huge issue. I think that's bigger than just the development ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other, Commissioner Helms?
Yes, the way you described these individuals, like yourself, I recognized a couple names, but not many. Did you actually personally interview these individuals, or was this off their application?
This is strictly off of their application that was submitted.
Any other questions? You're asking for an approval, right?
I am, yes.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Simpson.
I will take the opportunity to move that we add these folks who took of their time and their interest and passion about an issue to apply and approve these committees. Look forward to their comments and recommendations, and so I'll make that in form of a motion.
Thank you. We have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
You speak so eloquently. Such a waste. Okay, the next one.
Before you move forward, and it's probably because my ears are getting old, but did the board ever approve the consent agenda as amended? I know you moved it off, but I don't recall hearing a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We did.
I think we did, yeah.
But we'll approve it again.
If you did it, I didn't hear it, that's why I'm asking.
Okay, we did.
Check with the clerk.
You're looking at me like,
You can check with the clerk, but I'm pretty sure that we did.
I thought I made a motion to approve as
Yeah.
amended.
too many cookies, Richard.
Commissioner Helms, did you just make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Earlier, I thought I did. I made that a
What's your excuse, Jason?
I'm sorry?
Richard ate too many chocolate chip cookies. Levity. Okay. We have our CFO now, Ms. Lyles.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tonight we have with us our external auditor, Elliot Davis. Tom McNish is here to recognize our audit being completed, to give you the results from that. Following his presentation, I will give you a brief presentation on our summary of our financials and where we ended up at, and also to let you know that the North Carolina Department of State Treasurer's Office has also reviewed our financial report and approved it. So I would like to ask at this time that Tom McNish join us, please.
Mr. Davis, would you hold on 1 minute? Come on up. Mr. Helms, make your motion again. I just don't like the way they're all eyeballing us.
All right, I make a motion that we approve the amended consent agenda.
Okay. I have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the audit for the county, the financial statement audit and the compliance audit. I'm just going to provide a brief overview of the audit process. Want to start off by thanking Ms. Lyles and the finance team and the DSS team for all of their help in getting us through the audit. Very arduous process, as you know, and they're tasked with getting us all the information we need to cover that, while at the same time covering their day-to-day as well. So we really appreciate all their hard work in getting the audit complete. So what I'd like to do is just cover our required communications under the auditing standards with you as the governing board. So this facilitates that. I'm going to briefly cover our audit reports, which are really the results of our process, and then a couple of findings that we had that we'll touch on as well. So just in terms of an overview of the audit process, we do our homework, do a lot of planning before we come in and start asking your finance team and your DSS team for audit evidence. So we want to make sure we got a good plan, have done appropriate risk assessment, and then come in with a blueprint to cover the county's audit. That's not a static thing. It changes from year to year, especially in the current environment with the pandemic, which affects everything. It certainly affects the county, any county's finances and their compliance as well. So we definitely these days are taking that into consideration when we're performing a county audit. We do employ a materiality threshold. In other words, when we're looking at all the transactions and balances that occur throughout the year for the county, we are sampling those. So it's not practical to look at 100%, but based on a risk assessment, we concentrate on the areas that are most significant for the county's finances. Internal controls are very important to us in the audit process, so that can be anything as simple as your approval process for a disbursement or a purchase. Your monthly bank reconciliations, are those properly prepared and reviewed? So we look at those things. We want to look at the processes and procedures that your finance team and your management team engages in every day as they're overseeing the county's financial record keeping and transactions. So in doing that, our responsibility is to give you our opinion as to whether your financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That's important to the users of the financial statements. They want to be able to pick up the annual financial report of the county and be able to rely that those balances, those footnotes, those tables are accurately stated in all material respects. So in doing that, we look at the county's significant accounting policies. Are they in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles? So are they similar and within bounds of what other counties would use when they're putting together their financial reporting? And are they in accordance with GAAP or generally accepted accounting principles? So we do testing to give our opinion on that. Contrary to what folks might think, accounting is not an exact science. It does involve some judgments on the part of your management team. That's fine. What we want to do is test those to see if they're reasonable, and again, if they're in compliance with the required standards and principles. We look at and audit your financial statement disclosures. That's all the text that's behind the basic financial statements, and it gives the financial statements context. It gives additional information and interpretation so that those exhibits that are up front in the document make sense. We're going to look at recorded or unrecorded corrected misstatements. So just about any set of financial statements, particularly for a big county like Union County, it's going to be subject, there are going to be errors in those financial statements. Now the question is whether they're material or not. Are they significant? So that's what we're always looking at, and we're always going to consider if we have a bunch of small misstatements, do they accumulate to something that is significant? So just giving you an idea of, we do evaluate misstatements that are below materiality threshold to make sure they don't arise to something that would be misleading for the financials. At the end of the audit process, we do get a written representation letter from your management team attesting to certain things throughout the audit process, and just giving a commitment from your finance team, your DSS team, your management team, that certain things were as they were supposed to be, and they are attesting to certain assertions, and that's a template letter that's signed at the very end of the process. We had no disagreements with management. If we came to an intersection where there was a reporting item that we disagreed on, or a compliance issue that we felt like was so significant and we were not able to come to an agreement with management, we would be required by the standards to come to you as the governing board and resolve that. We did not have anything like that. We were not aware of any consultation with other accountants or audit firms. Sometimes that can occur if we came across something that we felt like was beyond the ability or experience of our team at Elliott Davis. Then the audit standards would require that we would have you consult with another firm. We didn't have anything that we were uncomfortable with in terms of performing the audit for the county. Significant issues discussed with management, I would tell you that those would fall within the normal realm of items that we would talk about as far as new reporting implementation or new reporting standards. A lot of the compliance issues that have arisen with CARES Act funding, that certainly was something that we discussed, but all normal things that we would expect to discuss and resolve as we went through the process with your team. We didn't encounter any difficulties in performing the audit. Now, if we felt like we were not getting information accurately, whether it was not coming fluid, if we felt like we were being stonewalled on information, then again, that would arise to something that we would come to you as the governing board to get resolution on that. We did not expect anything like that with Union County and did not experience that. We did have what would be, in terms of our findings, a couple of significant deficiencies as it related to some of your eligibility for DSS-related programs. That's not uncommon with a North Carolina county, but we are required to report those under state audit requirements. Other than those types of findings, communications, and then our engagement letter, and then the representation letter that I mentioned, we had no other written communication with your management team. So in terms of our 3 audit reports, or actually 4 audit reports, just going to cover those real quick. I mentioned that our responsibility is to give our opinion as to whether your annual financial report is fairly stated in all material respects. So can it be relied on? And we were able to issue an unmodified opinion. That's where you want to be. That's our opinion that based on the testing we performed, we are stating that the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects to give users of the financial statements some comfort level that they can rely on that to determine or make judgments about the county's financial position and condition. I mentioned internal controls. As a government entity, Union County, like any other county, municipality, is subject to government auditing standards. So that's a higher level of audit requirement that we perform in conducting your audit. And in terms of internal controls, it's also an added layer of consideration for internal controls around your financial reporting. So some of those things that I mentioned earlier, and also around compliance with laws and regulations that if you were non-compliant, they could be material to the financial statement. So an example would be if you had a DENR or EPA violation that resulted in a cleanup liability or a fine or penalty. If we felt like that was something that was material and needed to be recorded in the financial statements, we want to look at compliance and internal controls over detecting those items as we go through the audit process. So we are also giving a separate opinion through what we call actually a separate audit process, the single audit. And in that case, we're giving an opinion as to whether the county has materially complied with major program requirements. So like most counties in North Carolina, Union County makes good use of federal and state grant funds. So those granting agencies are relying on an opinion from us as your external audit firm as to whether the county administered and spent those funds in accordance with all those requirements that go along with those major programs. So we go through a whole separate set of testing for that, and we were able to issue an unmodified opinion as well on your compliance with major programs. So that's good news. Both of these, or all 3 of these opinions are a testament to your finance team and your DSS team that they did get unmodified opinions as far as compliance with major program requirements. So I mentioned we had a couple of findings in terms of eligibility for DSS programs. Beneficiaries, folks who are beneficiaries of those programs, you're required to maintain certain eligibility documentation for each of those applicants, each of those beneficiaries. It is a huge task. And so what we normally find with most of our counties is there's documentation that when we come in and request it, it's normally able to be provided to us, but it's usually kind of an after fact. If it's income verification or something as simple as residential address verification, there may be some files where that has to be retrieved to provide to us to make sure that we got an eligible beneficiary. So we did have some of those findings that are more detailed in the report. These are not findings that are uncommon in terms of our work with North Carolina counties. One other finding that we had that was required to be reported was in terms of your health benefits fund balance. There was a deficit in that balance for this year. I think that was driven by some volatility in claims. I think since then, your finance team, your management team has put in a reserve policy to address that going forward. They've detailed that response and that corrective action plan in the report, but that was a finding that we were required to include in our report. One thing that's new for this year as far as findings, the Local Government Commission, which, all North Carolina counties, as you probably know, are required to meet certain requirements of the LGC and to submit your audit report to the LGC. They have required that us as your audit firm comment on performance indicators of concern. So essentially what the LGC has done is developed certain ratios and thresholds based on amounts and balances that are in your financial statements. And if one of those calculations triggers what they would consider to be an indicator of concern, then we're required to report those to you, and the county is required to, within 60 days of our presentation, respond to those indicators of concern. So going back to the healthcare funding reserve deficit, that would be an example of something that they would consider to be a primary indicator of concern. I would tell you that, first of all, as I mentioned, this is a new requirement. So a number of our counties have had items that have triggered as an indicator of concern under the LGC's, under their criteria. So I think the main thing, which I believe your management team has already committed to and has included in their corrective action plan, a response that would be, I think, would lend itself to the 60-day requirement that the LGC is looking for to respond. So the main thing is if you have an indicator or something that would trigger a primary indicator of concern as defined by the LGC, they just want to see what the plan is to correct it and see that that plan gets implemented. So I think you're fine there as long as there's follow through on that plan and that implementation. Again, this is something new that the LGC implemented for this year. All of our counties have been affected by it, and it's just it's another layer of oversight that they want to have from a fiduciary standpoint to make sure that things are operating the way they should be. And Mr. Chairman, that's the extent of my overview. Would be glad to take any questions that the commissioners would have at this point.
Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the health balance deficit finding, was that for, do you know if that was for current employees or was that post-employee benefits?
It's the current. I'll talk about that in my presentation.
Okay, great, thank you. That was it.
Okay. Beverly, you gonna come back up? Okay, go ahead. And my question was the 60-day period. Does that start from today? In other words, this is the official presentation.
Yes,
That's my understanding. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom. So I wanted to go over our year-end results and summary with you all this afternoon. I won't go into great detail about each one of these categories, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask as I go through this. So the first summary that we'll look at is our government-wide statements. You have a lot of numbers in front of you here, so this is what we present in our audit report for all of our assets, liabilities, and fund balance at our full accrual level, which means all GAAP entries are included in this. This is not just a cash basis, but the fully accrued GAAP entries. I put a star beside of the lines that I really wanted you to pay attention to notice the changes year over year. As no surprise, you know, in FY21, we issued revenue bond debt for the Yadkin project. So our business type activity assets, due to those bond proceeds being placed in a construction account, of course, went up significantly, almost $300 million. Our capital assets as well went up a good bit as well. This is due to construction work in progress, mainly, again, your water and sewer projects that are ongoing. We have some facility projects as well that is ongoing that added to that construction work in process for our total capital asset value. For the first time in the history of Union County, we actually exceeded $1 billion in assets. The offset to that, of course, is we also exceeded $1 billion in liability at the same time. That big change is, of course, again, due to the long-term liabilities increasing. The 2021 revenue bonds added about $300 million to our debt load. Our total net position for government-wide activities, we always have a deficit in this area, and this is due to the fact that we carry all the long-term debt for Union County Public Schools, but we do not own any of the assets to report to offset that deficit. Overall, our total assets and deferred outflows exceeded our liabilities this year by $258 million. This is an increase from FY20 of about $44 million. To highlight our major changes, as I mentioned before, our cash and investments went up by $307 million. The majority of this is your unspent bond proceeds on your water and sewer projects and our GO bonds that we issued in 2019. As we complete those projects, though, you'll begin to see that cash and investment number come down over the next couple years as we start to complete the Yadkin project. I already mentioned before, our capital assets, construction work in progress, increased our total assets by $65.5 million. Our major liability changes, there's some good and bad here. A very positive note is that our net OPEB liability decreased by $20 million. And the factors that contributed to that is our contributions that we continue to put into that trust. We put $2.5 million into the trust in 21. In addition to that, the OPEB trust is actually invested at the State Treasurer's Office, which means they maintain those investments for us. They can invest in stock and equities on our behalf or we cannot. As you're aware, if you pay attention to the stock market this past year, it was an incredibly good year. So that added another $7 million into our trust that we didn't have to put in there ourselves that helped offset our total liability. This year also was our update to our actuarial study. So that also had some factors that played into our future assumptions that helped bring that liability down as well. You can find all of that information in the audit report under the supplemental information if you're interested in that. Our local government pension liability, however, increased $9 million. This is our share of the total local government pension that the state maintains on our behalf. This increase is attributable to we're adding more county employees each year, as well as our salary increase every year that's added in. Our separation allowance pension liability also increased by $5.2 million. In the state of North Carolina, we're required to provide this benefit to all law enforcement officers. So this increase is attributable to adding additional FTE count for law enforcement officers over the years, as well as current employees that are eligible for this benefit when they retire. Salary increases are taken into consideration as well for that actuarial study once it's completed annually. Our long-term liability debt increased $290 million. That's a result of us paying off debt and adding debt into our debt portfolio. And again, the majority of that is due to the revenue bond issuance. The other major change that we saw in our liabilities this year was payments due to other governments. As you're aware, we received ARPA funding during fiscal year 21 and the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Any of that funding that was unspent at June 30th, we were not allowed to report that as an asset or a fund balance to the county because it's due and payable back to the federal government if we don't spend that money down. Before I move forward, is there any questions about the government-wide statements? For our general funds, as you're aware, we have multiple general funds that we had in FY21. So our actual revenues ended up at $326 million. We exceeded our budget on that by just $326,000. Our actual expenses, however, were around $300 million, but they came in under budget by around $13 million. The other financing uses and expenses were around $23 million. This is transfers to other funds, such as our funding for capital projects. We transfer that money out of the general fund. Our total increase in fund balance for FY21 to all the general funds combined was $3.5 million. And as this chart indicates, you can see the trends from fiscal year 2016 for revenue and expenses and the revenue over under expenses, which really indicates what you're adding and taking away from your fund balance during that time. This particular slide goes over the fund balance for each separate fund for the general funds. The state of North Carolina only allows us to report one general fund. However, in historical years, we have broken out some of these funds for budgetary purposes. So just to highlight total general fund combined, we added the $3.5 million to that, but that's a combination of a spending down fund balance in our debt service fund, as well as adding funding to our general fund balance. And as if you recall, during the FY22 budget process for our operational general fund, we said we wanted to assign 100% of that fund balance. So that's why, if you'll notice, there is no unassigned fund balance in our general operating fund at the end of FY21. Just to highlight the debt service fund and economic development fund, the unassigned fund balances that are in these two particular funds are due to the debt that was issued. So the debt service fund was set up as a debt sinking fund. So when your voters approved bond referendums, you said as a board during that time you were going to increase the property tax rate the following year. And that is done prior to us actually issuing debt. So as we have issued that debt, now we are starting to spend down that fund balance. So that's why you have an assigned fund balance of the $8.4 million, is because in the FY22 budget, we're spending that down. The unassigned fund balance that's left, it is anticipated we will spend that down over the life of that remaining debt. The unassigned fund balance that remains in the Economic Development Fund is due to the bond issuance for the industrial park and the first land sale. That unassigned fund balance, however, is restricted in nature, that it can only be used for industrial park needs. Just to go over quickly your fund balance category and what each category actually means. Your non-spendable fund balance is, what it says, you can't spend it. So that's normally anything that you have in inventory that you're holding, or a prepaid item that you cannot convert to cash and actually spend it. Your restricted fund balance is restricted by an external party. Normally this is by state statute or federal guidelines. The majority of our restricted fund balance is accounts receivable by state statute, as well as some restrictions on grants that we've received that we have not spent out yet. The committed fund balance, which is the majority of our total fund balance, is your board policy for your 20% fund balance. Is around $62 million. And that's calculated based on the preceding year's operational expenditure. So it's calculated based on the FY22 operation expenditures for the general fund. Assigned fund balance is what has been assigned by the board at the date that we issue our audit report. And unassigned is amounts that are available for future use. So before I move on, is there any questions about the fund balance in the general funds? So this actual chart here is actually in the PAFR that you have. This is just a high-level overview to show the citizens where your money comes from a revenue perspective, in which all of you are aware the majority of your revenue source is from property taxes, and then the second largest revenue source is from our sales tax generator for the county. Is there any questions about that? And our expenses, this shows just a high-level overview of where is your money going in the general fund. 38% is related to education, and then the second highest level after that is 17% is going out for debt service cost. So I'll briefly talk about the water and sewer fund at a very high level. As you can see from this chart, going back to fiscal year 2016 through 2021, we saw our gradual increases in our operating revenues. And as you can see in 21, it jumped up quite a bit, but that's due to the fact that we raised water rates to cover our bond coverage ratios, as well as to meet our additional bonds test to be able to issue the 2021 revenue bonds. Our operating expenditures, again, gradually increasing to $51 million this year, and that also includes the depreciation of, it's around $18.5 million today. Based on these results, our water and sewer fund, this is a combination of all water and sewer funds, their operating fund, their capital fund, their reserve fund for their sewer and water capacity fees. We saw an increase in net position of $18 million. And this is a very summarized chart to show operating revenues, expenses, their operating income in numbers dating back to 2017, showing their income loss and transfers. I think last year there was a question about what is our loss on joint venture and what did that equate to. So they have assets as well that they are depreciating each year. They didn't have any major assets that they were adding on. So that expense on depreciation actually results in a loss in our value for our half for the Catawba River Treatment Plant. Just to highlight the contributions that are included in here, this includes both cash contributions and non-cash contributions. So our system development fees are included in that, as well as any developer lines that are actually placed in the subdivisions. When they turn that over to us, we record that as a contribution to the water and sewer fund that becomes an asset of the county that we maintain. Is there any questions about water and sewer fund? No. So now we'll talk about the health fund related to the audit finding. We normally don't consider this a major fund for discussion for this presentation, but this year we needed to talk about it a little bit more. Just for comparison on this chart, you can see dating back to 2016, our assets and deferred outflows remain consistent based on trends during that time, as well as our liabilities and deferred inflows, as well as the fund balance. We remain consistent. However, in 2021, there was kind of this perfect storm that was created based on claims. We had COVID claims. We had employees that maybe needed some non-emergency surgeries that they had put off because of the COVID shutdown. They were playing catch up on that. And as the auditor mentioned, you know, it was just a volatile claim year for many counties also. In addition to that, you know, we did, moving on to the revenues and expenses, we still paid about $1.2 million of COVID claims out of the ARPA funding. Had we not done that, our deficit would have been even greater. So as you can tell on this chart as well, trending revenue and expenses, when we try to make these estimates to determine our year-end, you know, where are we going to end up at year-end, we do that based on trends. This year our trends were not anywhere near what we expected those to be. Again, that's attributable to multiple factors. And, you know, just to kind of give you an overview of where are we at as far as total participants in our health fund compared to 2016, we've added quite a bit, and that's based on, you know, adding additional members to our plan. This includes, as you asked before, current employees and retirees. That's under 65. That is in our self-insured health plan. So over this course of time, we've added over 600 members to our plan. So our costs have gone up. We've seen inflation in medical care costs as well. That's played a factor. So unfortunately, it was just a perfect storm to create the deficit in our fund balance this year. As our auditor mentioned, we have put into place by the management team a fund balance policy in May of this past year to reach that 20% fund balance level over time in our health fund to mirror your committed 20% fund balance of the general fund. We also are holding bi-monthly meetings with the management team, finance, budget, and human resources to stay on top of our trends and where we're seeing our claims increase throughout the year. Do you have any questions about the health fund?
Do you expect those measures will satisfy the LGC on this issue?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And just to reiterate, this is an issue that local governments throughout the state have faced this past year in terms of a volatile and difficult to navigate health fund balance.
Yes, what we've seen is our claims are not being processed as fast during the COVID time. Hospitals were overwhelmed, doctors' offices were overwhelmed, and it was like the self-insured plans, everybody was playing catch-up. And we actually have to accrue back any claims that were for service dates prior to June 30th through the end of August. That's when we run our trial balance for the auditor. So any claims that are actually paid after June 30th with a June 30th service date actually have to go back to the prior fiscal year. So that's included as well. Our incurred claims but not reported doubled this year compared to prior years for all of those reasons added together.
Thank you.
Any further questions? That concludes my presentation. You actually have an action to take on this item, which is to accept the fiscal year 21 annual comprehensive report and the FY 21 popular annual financial report, which is actually printed out for you. It's a much condensed version of some financial information that's much easier to read, and if the citizens are interested in our finances, they probably can use that as a guide compared to reading through our entire financial report.
Commissioner Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I move that as a board, we accept the fiscal year 2021 annual comprehensive financial report and fiscal year 2021 popular annual financial report.
We have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Andrew Balcom, if you'll come forward, I sort of didn't forget, but I know I'm gonna put you in front of one more business item, because I know you've got some young children.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Respected board members, Mr. Manager, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. You'll have to forgive me, I do not have a presentation for you this evening. Tonight I'm here to speak on the North Carolina Agricultural Development Trust Fund grant. Is a process that was enacted in March of 2005 by the state legislature and is administered through the Department of Agriculture Commissioner, the Honorable Steve Troxler. This is a grant program that is specifically for public and public-private entities. The majority of the funding that's allocated by the state legislature annually is given to trust funds for agricultural land preservation. The second aspect of this grant process is for profitability for agricultural entities. This can be public institutions, it can be county governments, etc. The Extension Office did apply for a grant through the trust fund for support of the Special Events Center at Jesse Helms Park in the amount of $235,000. This has been about an 18-month process for us due to the state legislature not passing a state budget until recently. As soon as the legislature passed the budget, we were awarded the funding. I would like to state that for the project aspect of this grant process, the Union County was allocated more funds than any other project in the state. And I think that shows a commitment from the Department of Ag and Commissioner Troxler to agriculture here in Union County, and shows its support and economic importance to our county overall. And so with that, my request this evening is to accept the grant application and then to also accept the funding and support. We do have 2 years to spend this money. In our process, we have requested the money be spent on amenities for our newly constructed facility. The trust fund does require matching funds. However, those funds were provided with the amount of construction for the project. So there's no additional funding support that would be required by the county at this time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I believe Commissioner Simpson had some comments.
Oh, I'd just say thank you, Andrew. They say no good deed goes unpunished. This is certainly a good deed on your and county staff's part to secure this funding. The punishment, I guess, is, as Commissioner Rape said, you got to stay out late for yet another night. So apologize for that. But I remember when this fund was implemented in the state legislature. It's not every year that they dispense funds. And as Andrew said, I think it is an indication of the respect that the Department of Agriculture has for the long-term success and viability of agriculture and its impact here to Union County and the region. So I commend you and congratulate you on that.
Thank you, sir.
I'm beginning to see where you took your eye off my little project. You was working on something bigger.
I'll get right back to it, sir.
Okay. You need two motions?
That is.
There's two action items here.
There's actually three. The third one is approval of Budget Amendment 14 for us to distribute the funds within the county. Yes, sir.
I need a little advice here. Can we need to vote on them separately? Okay, give me the first one.
Yes, sir. The first one is to approve the grant funding request.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve Mr. Balcom and Union County Ag's grant funding request of $235,000. That's the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The second is to accept the grant award from the North Carolina Department of Agricultural Trust Fund grant program in the amount of $235,000.
Okay, I'll make the motion to accept the grant award of $235,000 by the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. All in favor?
Aye.
And the third is the approval of Budget Amendment 14. That is creation of line item for the money to be placed in the agricultural services budget to be then spent accordingly.
Okay, I'm going to incorporate what Mr. Balcom said as my motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank our Assistant County Manager, Patrick Nyland, for his guidance, and Parks and Recreation Director, Jim Chaffin, for his work on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe our last item on business, call Mr. Matthews forward.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, board members. If you may recall, months ago, it's been probably nearly a year, there was some interest in purchasing a piece of property the county owns on Lancaster Highway, Highway 200. It is across from the CATA school property. It's approximately 24 acres. At the time, we had an individual who was interested in that property. He made an offer, but he wanted to do some due diligence before he finalized that. That offer ended up going away. He was not able to meet what he wanted as far as to be able to develop the property. We went through an upset bid process for that. So we received his offer. We noticed that in the paper. We waited for any upset bids. There were none at the time. So his was the highest offer, but he ended up removing his offer for the property. Fast forward, about a month or so ago, we received another individual's interest in this property, same property. They made an offer. We advised them we would have to go through the same upset bid process where we noticed this in the paper. We put the amount of the offer in the paper. Anyone who wishes to upset that can. There were no submittals at the time. So we're here today. The board has an offer at this point of $405,000 for the property that's noted in your agenda item. You're under no obligation to accept the offer. However, the way the statutes read, we're supposed to take some action within 90 days, either to accept the offer or reject the offer. So we've brought this to the board for your consideration, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
If my memory serves me correctly, this offer is twice what we were offered the first time.
It's not quite twice. It's a little less than twice.
Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, and this may be better directed towards General Counsel. In terms of disposing of government-owned property, are there state statutes that speak to that in terms of how it's done and what kind of flexibility we have in terms of disposition of property?
There are a variety of state statutes that speak specifically to the disposition of real property in North Carolina, and you are confined to using those statutory methods. One of those methods is the upset bid process. There are others depending on the type of property and the particular method. But the private party method of sale where you advertise it, sign a contract, and it's over lickety-split, that is not available for governments to use. We have to use, generally, it's a more public, more fair, a little bit slower process with quite a bit more transparency into how those transactions are conducted.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I'll make a motion for us to accept the offer of $405,000. Have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. County manager comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. A couple of items. Number one, thank you to Beverly Lyles and our finance staff for the work that they have done on our audit and the audit reporting. I believe you have a copy of the popular annual financial report that was given to you tonight. Very nicely done. Congratulations to that whole team on the awards that they received tonight based upon their work. I'd like to also thank them for their guidance and their diligence in guiding this organization in its financial matters. They prove time and time again the value of their service to Union County, and we certainly do appreciate that. With regard to the $235,000 grant received by from the Department of Agriculture, Commissioner Simpson and I were having a discussion today, and I remember about 2.5 years ago when Commissioner Troxler visited Union County on a county-wide tour, and I had the privilege of spending some time with him then and sharing the vision that Union County had for the event center that was yet to be approved and to be constructed. And, we talked a lot about that. We talked about the opportunity for this funding at that time, and he made us aware that that would be available and had the support of his office. I will tell you that since then, I've had a number of conversations with farmers, large farmers in our county, who are very appreciative of this board's support of agriculture in Union County. And they have made it very clear, abundantly clear to me that whenever they have an opportunity to speak to Commissioner Troxler and those at North Carolina State University Cooperative Extension program, that they make it known that Union County Board of County Commissioners in Union County strongly support agriculture here, and I think that when we stand behind our commitment to agriculture and make these kinds of investments that have been made with the event center, that it really is heartwarming to know that others in our state support us as well. So thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Commissioner Simpson.
Yeah, I'd just say kudos to the financial team. Excellent job. It's always, as we deliberate budgets from year to year, it's always nice to have confidence in the staff that puts the information together, and we feel confident that the figures are accurate and we can move forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams.
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Helms.
I agree. I'd like to commend our financial group for their outstanding performance. Like I told you before, we're not going to build you a room to keep all these awards that y'all continue to give, but thank you for your service.
What I would like to say is something about what I told my wife today. I said we isolated ourselves this weekend. We didn't test, we tested negative last week, but my daughter, who was a school nurse, had COVID in her whole family. It went through her whole family, but under the new CDC guidelines, they were able to go back to school today because they were symptom-free and past 5 days of testing positive. But we watched a lot of television, and it was meaningful to me because the biggest thing I got was I listened. I listened to everybody here. I'm starting to realize when Beverly talks, when Andrew talks, when Brian talks, when Mark talks, when the commissioners talk, everybody brings something to the table. And I just really want you to know I'm humbled by it. I saw Liz get up and go out a couple times, and I realized the time is almost nigh, isn't it? Probably when we have another meeting, there'll be 4 people in the Liz family. So that's all. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Got a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.